Alright guys, we are back once again with some more transmission talk. I know, don't click off the video yet though. Hopefully this will be the final video of the T5 and the T5 issues that we've been having, but I want to document a little bit of it. I want to help. I'm not going to do like an entire kind of how-to video because I don't even know how to. So I will show you this. We have the shift fork pads, so if you need to know the part number, there you go. I always seem to have some comments saying that it's bad synchros and stuff like that, causing the transmission to pop out, I guess. Well, look, I'm not a transmission expert. I'll go ahead and tell you that ahead of time. But I will say this. Okay, so let's talk about how the transmission works first. So this is your hub. This is, there's a term for it, but I call it a synchro hub. What this does is slide back and forth. Okay, so it's in neutral right now. This is fourth gear. This is third gear. This is second gear. And this is first gear. So this is first, this is neutral, and that is going to be second. Now, what was happening is, you can tell right here that it didn't completely engage. So what was happening is the shift forks, since the tabs were worn out, they didn't have enough throw. As you would shift the gears in the car, it wouldn't shift it all the way enough to completely engage. Now watch what I mean. See that? That's the way it needs to be, but because it was worn out, it would not shift this all the way over. So that's why it would pop out of gear. It wasn't fully engaged. And it engages right here on these little ears right here. So as this slides over, the synchronizer slows this gear down, and then this is allowed to slide over and lock in. So the question was, why would it not fully be engaging? Well, that's going to come from these pads here. On this one, not only did it not have the pads, but it had already ground into the metal. So now it wasn't able to engage this as far as it needed to. So just imagine, guys, this is how it works. It goes on like this. As you move this, that arm pushes this. That's going to be the problem. That's why it did not completely engage. Now let's talk a little bit about synchronizers and how they work. There again, remember guys, I'm not an expert, but I just want to show you this. So this is a third gear, if I'm not mistaken, and this is a synchronizer. If you look on the inside of this synchronizer, you see like little pads. They're almost like brake pads in a way, like what you would find in an automatic transmission. And the way this works is, as this hub right here slides forward, it puts pressure on this synchronizer, which then pushes up into your gear, and it binds down like a brake pad. Like once you push this thing, you can barely turn this gear. It gets really hard. So as that moves, it pushes this, and then it slows this gear down. When it slows the gear down, this is now able to slide forward and lock in. It's locking in on this gear right here on these teeth. That's what is holding this thing in gear, are these teeth right here. Now they're different sizes, they're different shapes for different gears. Second gear obviously does not look that way. You can see how much bigger these teeth are right here. So anyway, that's kind of how a synchronizer works, guys. Now we had some burring on second gear, and I'm pretty sure we had the burring because the synchronizer was not, working correctly. Enough of that. I'm not going to bore you all with my rudimentary explanation of transmissions because I probably don't even know what I'm talking about. So what are we going to do now? Go ahead, put these tabs on the shift forks over here. We're going to put some RTV around this thing, button it all up. I'm going to get under here and pull the bell housing out, and then we're going to inspect anything. All right, guys, let's go ahead, get started.
Hold my beer, don't hold my breath. Hold my weight, show and flex. I'm so hard, diamonds envy rhyming. Look, I'm so cool, I got my own climate. Yeah, mountainous terrain to climb. No, you fucking with the hustle, need a rope.
Well, it is done. I know it's not pretty. Got a lot of orange RTV sticking out of it, but I didn't realize that that's all I had tonight. So we're going to trim everything up once it dries, make it look as good as possible. So as you can see, I have a different top plate on the transmission. This come off of one of our other T5s, which has the neutral safety switch right here, but we're not going to utilize it. We're just going to use it as a plug right now. But the reason why I did that is because these shift forks don't really have any wear on them, so we're just going to use these. A few things I want to talk about. When I bolted the tail housing on this transmission, it caused the input shaft to lock up. So immediately I thought, okay, well, I've got it too tight. It's pressing on the back race back here and wouldn't spin. The weird thing is the back shaft, the main shaft would spin. So you could spin the main shaft right here, no problem. The issue was up here on the input shaft. So long story short, guys, make sure that whenever you bolt your tail housing up, it is even. It's got to be even. So push this thing up. Once you get it started, just come back here with a hammer and kind of hit this thing, right? And make sure that it's seated up in there. What'll happen is that race inside the transmission will get kind of cocked, that main shaft race. And then whenever you put this on, it'll pinch that race, and it'll cause everything to kind of lock down. It took me 2 or 3 times to get it right. And at the same time, you're trying to feed this through and get the pin in. And it's aggravating, guys. But that was probably the hardest thing about it, was making sure that's good. But as you can see now, everything's fine. So what we're going to do is I'm going to crawl under the car. We'll go back to a time lapse. And I'm going to pull this bell housing off. We'll see what it looks like.
Here I go, no red carpet in no rope. Put me down there with my folk and let the slow come strike a pose. I write my flows like a fighter. These are punches being thrown to your nose. Ducking jab, leaving blood patterns on your clothes. I might be white, Muhammad Ali. Assalamu alaikum. Here for the feast, but I couldn't be a Muslim. They can never be, cause I'm still pissing in a bear full of bees.
So this is the flywheel. To start with, initially I thought it looked pretty good. But you can tell it's got a little bit of wear on the teeth, which would still work, but you can tell that starter started catching it. Right over here is where you start to get a little bit of damage. So this must have been right here where the starter was trying to engage. That was that noise we were hearing. So anyway, guys, that's not going to work. We're not going to use that. But just so happens we have another flywheel right here. So I'm going to clean it up with some sandpaper. Same thing I did to the other one. And then we're going to toss this thing back in and go ahead, put our new starter on, put all this stuff back on. And hopefully, now that we've got the transmission done, this thing will shift good. Okay, so I want to go ahead and say right now, I'm nervous about this. I'm taking a shot in the dark, but I would call it a calculated guess here. That was the problem as to why it was grinding going in the second. I really do feel like that it just wasn't engaging the synchronizer correctly. So let me talk real quick about why I think this happened. So the stop points, the end points were never set correctly on this shifter. So it was basically overthrowing. What happens when it overthrows? Well, you can break shift forks. So I think that's what happened. I think it just got overthrown so many times that it didn't break the shift forks, but it did, destroy those pads. So I think that's why. Whenever you pull it back and engage it, there's like that much of a gap. So that shouldn't be that way. All right, guys. I'm going to go ahead, just kind of do my thing on this. I'll catch back up with you guys once we start installing everything. So last night I didn't bother to do a time lapse when I was putting the transmission in. Basically it's the same procedure as me removing it, so kind of be pointless. Listen, we have problems, okay? We still are having issues. I really hate to do this, but I'm gonna let you hear the car. I'm gonna start it one time and I want you to hear the starter. I'll tell you what, let's just go ahead, listen to it, and then we'll talk about it. Now, the camera may cut the sound out, but hopefully not. I want you to hear it. Okay, so we got 2 things going on here. As you can tell, it grinds whenever it starts up. It's just real noisy. Also, you heard like a rotating tapping sound. All right, guys, let's talk about this for a quick second. Now, I don't know everything there is to know about these Foxbody bell housings and combinations and flywheels, but let's just go over what it is that I have, and I'll tell you what I think the problem is. This is a 94-95 T5. No problem whatsoever. You can use this all day. You really just need to swap out the input shaft to a Foxbody and then swap out the bell housing to a Foxbody bell housing. You can run it the other way, but we're not going to get into that. That's what's been done to this car. And with that combination, everything will go right up in there. We also have a 157 tooth flywheel. Matter of fact, I've tried 2 now so far. We have a 5-speed starter in the car. We have no backing plate, no back plate, no block plate. Now, I know some of you are saying, well, that's your problem right there. You have no backing plate, so there's your shimming. Well, I shimmed the starter to the exact thickness of the backing plate, and still basically the same thing. It got a little quieter. So the shimming part of it's not a big deal. I've got a lead on another bell housing and another block plate. But let's talk about the bell housing, because the bell housing on this car is completely different. I'm going to throw the number up right here for you guys. This is the bell housing that we have, which is the older style bell housing. So this is pre 1985 bell housing. Well, what does that mean? Well, it's just a smaller bell housing. Now, Bolt pattern's the same, and yes, it will absolutely work. The only difference is these smaller bell housings don't really like that 10.5-inch clutch. It wants to kind of hit. Now, I've heard some people say you can absolutely use it, and some people say you can't. Now, I found all this out later. Like I said, I mean, I'm running into a lot of issues that I've never had before. So we found out about the bell housing kind of a little late. Anyway, it is what it is. I think that's the tapping noise that we're hearing. I think the clutch is touching on the bell housing. Some people say you can run this and you can clearance it out a little bit and it'll work fine. There's a lot of variables in here. Right now, I'm trying to find an E6 bell housing, which is the newer one. So here's that number right here. This will be your 85 and newer bell housings. And with those, you can run a 10.5-inch clutch, no problem. So guys, that's where we're at right now. So what I'm gonna do is get out here, figure all this stuff out. I may include some bits and pieces here and there for you guys, but I'm just gonna figure this thing out and we'll get it running, then we'll talk about what we had to do to fix it. So the car is running, and the transmission, I don't know if it works or not. I mean, I assume it does, but I'm not obviously putting the car on the ground. I'm not gonna run it like that. So we're also still waiting to hear back on the Tremec TKO 500, so we may be running that. That starter over there was behind the automatic that was originally in this car. So I said, okay, that could be the problem. So I swapped over to another starter that came with my red car, which I assumed would be a 5-speed starter. Put it in here, same stuff. So there's a difference. Guys, let me know. All right, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this video up. And as always, thanks for watching.